So, if you are a marketer, business developer, entrepreneur, or business owner, and you are tussling with the noise of digital marketing right now, then my guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast is Robert Downey. Robert is the co founder of Simply Be Found, and he has, I can assure you, a lot of answers that is going to help you cut through a lot of the noise and a lot of the chaos that is digital marketing today. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Neil. I appreciate it.
These are busy times, aren't they? There's so much chaos out there. The thing is moving at a faster rate than ever, isn't it?
Things are moving so fast. I think things are moving faster now than I saw things move in the 90s. I mean, it reminds me of, do you remember, I'm a date myself when I say this, when we go back to, the 14.4 and the 56K modems, and all of a sudden we got cable modems and we were connected to online all the time and we didn't have to wait for dial-up. I think we're moving at those speeds now with AI coming into the picture.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's almost, I keep finding myself saying, and I'm sure you do too, these kind of words, perfect storm. It just feels there's a big need in the marketplace for shaking it up, doing something different and moving away from the kind of commodity that has been branding and product and service over the last probably decade. We need this kind of new energy coming into it, don't we?
We do. We have to. It used to be simple for small businesses or any kind of business. You put your ad inside of the yellow pages and you had that one opportunity every single year to get in there. And if you didn't get in there, you're screwed. And now you have so many different devices and different ways people are finding you. People are finding you by using AI. If you've watched any of at least here in the United States, if you've watched any football, you see ads for Gemini and all these, Apple and all these voice assistants. And, people are asking their phones or asking these devices for recommendations, and then they're getting more details because they're having a conversation. They're asking, hey, what are the reviews about that business, or what's more details, when do they open? And if you're not providing that right information and you're not submitting out that right information, you're going to be left behind because it doesn't know about you. It doesn't know anything that is anything about you. So you have to make sure you're in those right spots, and you have to make sure you're in all the spots to be able to be found by more local customers or more customers in general. It doesn't matter if you're in e-commerce or if you're service-based business or if you have a retail shop.
I want to go deeper in a minute into the kind of the how we do this and kind of where, the resources are and kind of almost sort of unpick this opportunity, but keeping it initially at a higher level for some people who don't really understand what we're talking about here. I mean, we've grown up, you and I, with the whole kind of SEO, search engine optimization, that old traditional kind of use of being friendly to Google where, yeah, you've got to obviously be producing content that serves the customer, but at the same time, almost having one eye on how Google is translating what you're saying so that, you can actually appear in those search results. That's the kind of the old school style, isn't it? But it's moved and it's changed. And this word voice that comes into search optimization, it's different, isn't it? It's much more conversational.
It's very conversational. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're talking to that smart speaker sitting on your kitchen counter or a desk, wherever it might be sitting, or if you're actually typing it in, or if you're using your computer to be able to do it, or your mobile phone to be able to do it. That voice is very conversational, picking up those data points. As I've said on a couple of other different blogs and different videos I've done, Google is dead as we know it. Does that mean that Google's dead and they're going away? No, it doesn't mean Google's dead and they're going away. But it used to be very much to where everybody said, hey, I went and I Googled it. And the interesting thing about that topic, in my opinion, is you had a lot of people who would say, hey, I Googled it, but really they used Bing or they used Yahoo or they used any of these other search engines to do it. But Google made that brand. If we go back into time, I remember when there was Lycos, Alta Vista, and all these other different platforms out there to search on. And Google came into the market, and then the parent company for Google is Alphabet. So when they came into the market and they branded the whole entire piece of I Googled that information, it was just like what we seen back in AOL when everybody thought you had to be inside of AOL to be able to be on the internet. everybody thinks they have to be inside of Google to do it, and they don't realize when they get outside of it and they're using Bing or any other kind of voice search or any kind of AI search, it's all natural to them. And they still say to this day, hey, I Googled that to be able to find your business, but that might not necessarily be what it is. And that's no different than, and I think over in the UK, you guys have the same thing, but if you have a box of Kleenex over by you, and it might have been something that you got from a different store and it might be a different brand, but you're still going to call it a Kleenex, even though Kleenex didn't make it. It's that same search phrase. So as a business owner, you have to remember you have people making these searches in all these different spots. And it's not just about being found inside of voice search. It's being found on AI search. It's about being found when they type it in. No matter how they're searching, you have to make sure you're being found.
And it's interesting because when you start to describe it like that, and we're using this phrase conversational, it is different. The game has changed. The boundaries have changed, haven't they, when it comes to AI? Because if you're using something like, say, ChatGPT or Perplexity on the native app, say on your smartphone, you can actually talk to it. This is a proper conversation. We're not making this stuff up, are we? When we say
No.
conversational, we truly mean conversational, because it is about the being found, but then it's going deeper, isn't it? With the whole, as you mentioned there, Robert, with the whole kind of thing about testimonials or product reviews. It's kind of, we've got to be lining all this stuff up. It's not just a case of being found and then they're at our front door. We've got to take them in. We open the door, we take them in, and then we guide them, don't we? How are we going to actually do that? Because that's hard, isn't it?
It's actually quite simple to be able to do it as long as you have the right content in the right places. So you have to make sure you're registered on the right networks, and that's being registered on all of the networks that we used to call, in the marketing world, we always called citations or aggregators. And Simply Be Found actually became an aggregator because we go out to all of those networks. That's your first step. Your second step is making sure that you're talking about yourself inside of social media. Your third step is making sure that you have all the right spots or all the right pieces on your website. So having the right schema on your website is important. Having the right SEO set up, the right internal linking, the right, if I didn't say it, schema inside of there to be able to make sure you tell those algorithms, this is what information I provide. So when they come in, they do a scan on that website, they know that you solved that. So if you are a restaurant and you have gluten-free burritos, you have to make sure that you're talking about gluten-free burritos, or else no one's going to know you have that. And with AI coming out and all these different AI searches, it's really kind of changed that game for making sure that information is there. And a good use case I've seen on that, when I was up in Steamboat for Thanksgiving. We went up there to go sledding and play in the snow, got a ton of snow, which was absolutely awesome. But there was a lady looking for a restaurant. We were inside of the grocery store, and she pulled up Chat GPT. And I stood there and I was staring at her, and I ended up having a conversation afterwards because I'm sure she thought I was absolutely just insane staring at her. But she asked Chat GPT, can you find a restaurant that serves this type of food and that's gluten-free? And it came back and it said, okay, what are their and then she asked Gemini inside of voice. It's actually talking back and forth with her or Chat GPT. It's having the conversation with her at this real time. And she goes, hey, can you tell me which one has the best reviews? Can you tell which one also has this? Because my husband wants this. And it went through and it started answering these questions for her. Now, if your website and your social media and all of your listings don't have that information on it, you're going to be left behind because it has no idea it even exists. So it's an entire new world for any business owner out there. They have to make sure they're in the right spots with that right information. When I talked to her afterwards, I said, how long have you been using this? And she goes, my grandson, put me onto it. And she goes, being in my 70s, it's a lot easier for me to do this than have to look at a screen and be able to type. She goes, I can talk with my voice faster than I can my typing, and then I can have an actual conversation. She goes, it's like having just my assistant doing here. She goes, I've been in business my entire life. I used to have an assistant that would go through, make reservations for me, and do all that. And I don't have that anymore. I have this. And she goes, I'm retired. So it's like having an assistant all over again. I thought that was just so interesting when she said that.
It's powerful, isn't it? And I think just, I mean, that's just a brilliant example, like you say, of this kind of changing way that we're actually interacting with this stuff. So if I'm a small business then, and I'm looking to kind of cut through, and maybe I've got a lot of competition. I mean, that's a really good example there, where I'm guessing where she is, there is a lot of competition, and those reviews are going to be like gold dust, aren't they? So if I'm kind of in that situation, then is it almost then, I'm just thinking out loud here, and I'd be really interested in your take on this, is if I'm creating content, it's almost like I've got to think about putting this concierge layer on top of my, say, website or some of the social media sort of posts that I'm doing, almost that I'm kind of enabling the AI or Google Gemini, which is obviously Google coming through in this kind of hybrid sense of search. But if I have almost like a concierge mindset as a marketer, what I'm doing is I'm kind of almost enabling, there's a sort of a gluing together of new style customer with new style content, almost with this conversational thing going on in that concierge layer. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but it feels that it's not just purely page content. There's something else on
So,
top.
and it's called natural language. So when you're writing your social media posts, when you're writing your blog posts, when you're writing content for your site, that should be conversational type of text. Shouldn't be inside of, essay format unless you are, I mean, certain business types, sure, it makes total sense. If you're a doctor's office, you're going to talk about certain problems in certain ways that you have to talk to it in that level. But if you're a service area business, if you're a restaurant, or you're just the average business out there, auto repair, you want to have natural conversation. So I get the best results, and this is why Simply Be Found is actually redoing our entire website, is because we're going to change that content to being conversational. So I'll use a roofer as an example. I have all of their content being very, very conversational on their website, just like they would talk to that customer. They're ranking higher because of that. For one, it's going to cut through all the AI content that's all formal, and it's them having that conversation with that end user. That is what that end user is looking for. Nobody wants to be sold, but they want to be able to learn about you in that natural way. And the AIs love that. Any of the algorithms that go through and they scrape that website, if they know what each piece is about, if it's an actual conversation, it eats that alive because it loves that amount of content because it comes out real. And with all the noise that we have right now, yes, you can get, if we're talking to marketers and you're putting out a ton of information, I mean, we could write 1,000 blogs in probably 2 hours if using Chat GPT, if we didn't fact check it and we didn't care about what it is. It's about having that real information, because that real information is going to be what makes you set aside. So if you're a business owner, you have to make sure you have a blog. You have to make sure you have those pieces, which is really odd because when we started Simply Be Found back in 2020, I made the comment. I said websites are dead. They're just a business card. They don't really exist. It's nothing but grab that information, click on the phone number, and next thing you know, you're going. And voice search was taking over, but then AI came into it. And once AI came into that search and piece, it's looking for that information. So if you can't feed it, you're not going to be found.
So this whole idea then of conversational natural language, and I'm guessing obviously AI can support that, but it's different to the standard kind of ChatGPT output where you've got hitherto, moreover, and all these kind of words that none of us ever use conversationally, do we? I mean, when was the last time you and I talked about the word moreover? You just don't do it, do you? So it's bringing the human back into content, isn't it?
It is. And what's really awesome, so when you talk about generating content, using something like Chat GPT, you could, like, a same thing of having that lady make that, find a restaurant using that chat. You can have a conversation with Chat GPT to build a blog for you. You can say, I want it to sound like I am. I'm going to go through, I'm going to ramble for the next 15 minutes about all kinds of information. And this is what I want you to write a blog post about. And I want you to make it inside of my language. And it'll actually listen to you. It'll put it in that same context. You can say, I want it in that natural language base to sound like me. It'll automatically do that for you, which I think is a really cool, awesome piece. But the big piece is making sure it's that way. So most business owners go, well, I don't have time to be able to write blogs. I don't have time to be able to do that. Well, you can do it a lot easier if you do it that way. You can do it a couple different ways. You can use ChatGPT to do it. You can record a video of yourself doing it, and then you can get video content on top of it and be able to put it out to YouTube and social media. But if you just solve someone's problem, so say you're a service area business and say you're a garage door repair company or whatever you might be, and you just went and solved someone's problem, hop inside your truck, record a quick video. Doesn't matter the quality, record the video. And once you load that to YouTube, you can pull the transcript, throw it into ChatGPT, write a blog for it. Now you just got a blog, then you got video content, or you have video content, you have a blog, and then you can say, hey, write some social media for me that's in that natural language. Now you just did your social media at the same time. You can build content in very little amount of time. And what that's going to do is it's going to be that natural thing. So if you have a problem that you solve for somebody, somebody else is going to have that same problem, and that's your ideal customer. So then you just matched your ideal customer profile. Now you're able to just take that information, put it out there, and be able to actually make it to where now these search engines and different algorithms know exactly who you are, what you do, and what problems you solve. And it used to be back in the day where we said, hey, you have to be at this certain word length inside of blogs. I think that's gone away if it's in natural language.
Yeah, it's a huge difference, isn't it, really? And I can certainly see it in what, the pure marketers listening to this will think, oh, yeah, that's flow content. I get that. So my question then, Robert, does that apply to, let's call it stock content? So the About Us page on the website, the contact page, those kind of more formal static pages. Do we still do that in the kind of more natural language as well?
I would do it partially inside of there. You want to make sure it's inside of the right format, follow it. If you're looking to be able to do that, I think telling your story is going to be huge on any what I call internal pages. Your blog is more of your natural language area, but you want to tell your story on those pages and have a good flow. And I'm a big believer in Donald Miller and the story brand. I think he told that probably better than anybody that's been able to do it. He took a lot of ideas from a lot of different people like Dale Carnegie and all the people I grew up with. But it's one of those things to where if you tell your story on those pages, you're going to have it in that natural language anyway, because you want to be able to relate to that actual customer that's going to be inside of your website.
It's interesting the way you kind of describe this, and people saying, "Oh, well, I'm a bit too busy to do this." It's going to get to a point where you've got no choice, have you? You're either going to be doing it this way, or you're not in business. I mean, it's that profound, isn't it? That this is not a negotiable in the longer term. Probably you can get away with it for now, maybe over the next few months, but into next year, it's going to be gone, isn't it? The old way of doing business. So you have to make time.
And if you're not ahead of the game, your competition starts doing it, you're going to be behind, and they're going to be chasing the 8-ball. And it's going to be one of those things to where you're going to be behind all the time. It's going to take more time, more effort. You're not going to be able to make those mistakes to be able to fix what it is, because it's all about being able to have the right data. And when it comes to voice search, you have no data because it's so new. They're not even tracking that data at this point. The closest thing you have to being able to track the AI search pieces is if it says inside of your Google Analytics, ChatGPT or Gemini, which I'm starting to see pop up on the websites that we do. We don't do websites anymore, but I have my ones that have been with my agency for years. But it's one of those things to where I'm starting to see that start to pop up there. It's not tracking it 100%. So not even the reporting or the analytics have caught up to this technology. That's how fast we're moving right now.
Yeah. That is, again, that's a game changer, isn't it? Because once the marketers in the room are kind of seeing that, it's like, oh, hold on, I see some competitive advantage here. Because if I can scale that up, I'm going to be absolutely outplaying some of the newcomers in. They might be bigger businesses. This is going to allow most brands who are small to punch above their weight if they get in early, isn't it?
They can compete with the big boys majorly, and they can do it without spending any money on ads and without having any kind of ad budget whatsoever. I mean, you can go in as long as you follow the blueprint of, making sure that you're registered on the right networks, you have your social media, and you have the right SEO on your website, you're going to be golden. And it doesn't matter how big you are, it all matters on what it knows about you and that it knows everything that you possibly can solve. Because any search engine wants someone to come back and make a search and find the information they want, because that means they're going to come back and do it again and again and again. And they'll trust that source that it's going to. If it gives wrong information, it doesn't want to do that. So if those search engines don't know about you, you're going to be left behind.
So is geography an important thing here? Because I mean, you and I can remember the time from what you've said already, sort of back in the day. I mean, real old school marketing here, where geography didn't really matter. It was all about the long tail search phrases. And then about 10, 15 years ago or so, geography became the thing. It was all nearest me or near me, or it was always about putting the town or the city kind of in the search. Is geography going to be a big part of this when we're talking about natural search? Because it feels like, I mean, your use case there about the lady in the store, I mean, clearly that was wanting to go get that burrito kind of literally around the block. So
Right.
I'm assuming that geography is really important going forward.
For the right business, yes. So if you're an e-commerce business, no. If you're a local business, yes, those city pages are still going to be the ideal way you need to be able to do it. So if you're a service area business, you got to make sure you list all the cities you have in there. If you're a restaurant, it doesn't really matter to that extreme to have those city pages, because your location of what you're tagged with is going to have that information in that data set. So when you look at it, when you're turning your data into advertising, that street address is going to be what it is there. And that it knows if you're a restaurant that it wants to be able to find a radius that's as close as it possibly can to you. That's going to be part of that algorithm. But if you are servicing multiple different towns, you have to have those city pages in there. They have to have the right local SEO inside of your website for that and the right schema set up, or else you're not going to tell that algorithm, yes, I work in this city, this city, this city, this city, this city. Now, if you are nationwide, you don't want to list every single city inside of the United States, or else you're going to, it just won't make any sense whatsoever. It's not going to recognize it. In my opinion, you get about 10 city pages. And once you go over that, you're going to start diluting yourself out.
That's interesting. So is that going to be based then, I guess, on your kind of revenue priorities and strategic growth? And so kind of the business bit comes into play here, doesn't it then, if you're having to prioritize?
It does. And you got to remember, it's beyond just being on Google, because it used to be where you went and did your Google business profile. It is so much further beyond that. And a lot of, if we're talking service area, a lot of those guys have gotten beat up majorly by Google because of their whole new video verification and all the new stuff that they're requiring that's out there. So, I mean, it's one of those things to where when you're on the rest of the networks, and it all depends on what country you're in for it. I know the UK doesn't have as many networks, and you guys have some specific networks over there that don't match over here in the United States. But it's one of those things to where you have to make sure you stack that information right and on those networks. Because if you just register yourself on Google Business Profile, you're only going to be on Google products. That's going to get you on all the Google Voice stuff, but you're not going to be found on the rest of the networks that are out there, because they pull from so many different data sources. And probably one of the biggest things that happen, I don't know if, and I'd be curious, does this happen over in the UK where business owners are getting calls about, hey, your business isn't registered on voice search?
Not yet. I haven't heard that's a thing yet. So I think it's probably early days. We're probably playing catch up with you guys.
So here in the United States, businesses get this phone call. They say, hey, your business isn't registered on voice search. We only have X numbers. Some of them go as far as this. They say, hey, guess what? We only have X number of spots left inside of voice search for you. And if you don't do it now, you're going to be left behind. And all that is a sales tactic to be able to get them inside of there, because there's no specific way to register just on like Alexa. Alexa doesn't have a business directory. So Alexa picks its business information up from multiple different places. So it's one of those things to where you got to watch out for those pieces, because there's a lot of scams out there where they're not even doing anything, or they just register on Google. Well, great. That gets you on Google Business Profile. Anybody can get themselves on Google Business Profile.
That's good advice. And obviously, we've got to be watching out for
Yep.
all of this
I,
stuff.
I
I
was
mean,
just curious if that happened over in the UK. I
yeah,
didn't.
well, I've certainly not seen any evidence of it yet, but I'm sure the vultures will now start circling because they normally do if there's an opportunity, don't they?
I figure the newest one that'll be coming out is, hey, you're not being found on AI search, especially with how many ads are out there about that.
What's your view, Robert, in terms of Apple Intelligence? I mean, not necessarily whether it's going to be a good or bad thing, but when Apple come in with the kind of, the embedded intelligence AI within the Apple iPhone, I mean, is that going to be a game changer? Is that going to do anything different to what we're talking about?
Well, you got a few things that happen with Apple. For one, they used to have a major relationship with Yelp, and they pulled away from Yelp on their latest release, from what I can tell. And just looking at it from my developer level inside of my beta programs that I'm inside of Apple with, they pulled away from Yelp, pulling a lot of their data information. They now use Apple Business Connect to be able to register the business inside of their own system, because they want to control that data, because data has value and all these big corporations want to control it. Um, Apple Intelligence went and got a relationship with OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT. So you can connect your ChatGPT account to Apple Intelligence. It'll ask you, do you want us to ask ChatGPT or use our network when you make a search inside of there? So it's using those pieces to be able to go through and do that. And if you want to really dive into that intelligence, they're using ChatGPT for a lot of their information. Have you played with Apple Intelligence at all?
I haven't. No, we're not on the beta here. So
Okay. So
interesting.
Apple, so it's basically just taking Siri, connecting it into Chat GPT, and then it's going out and it's grabbing those data sources. It has a couple of its own data sources into it, but it's gotten really super smart. Siri's changed in a lot of different ways for the new phone that came out, and I always get confused because I'm about 3 versions in the beta program ahead of what the standard release is. So I'll talk to my wife and be like, "Hey, I've got this. Have you used this yet?" And she goes, "What are you talking about?" I'll talk to Dean, which is my business partner, and simplybefound.com, and do the same thing. I'm like, "Oh yeah, just use this." He goes, "What? It's not here." So, but it's one of those things to where it's tying into that Chat GPT system. I think Apple Intelligence is awesome. Android came out with their piece with Google using Gemini, doing the same exact piece, and they're using 2 different data sources. So anybody who's using an Apple phone, you have to make sure you're stacking everything to make sure it's ready for ChatGPT. If they're using an Android, you got to make sure it's stacked inside of Google.
It's a lot of wake up calls here, right? I
Yeah.
have to say, there's people kind of sat here thinking, "Oh my god, all this stuff I need to do." I kind of understand what the guys are talking about, but I'm not really sure what steps to take next. Now, obviously, simplybefound.com is a great starting point. What can people kind of expect? What kind of resources are available, and what would you want them to do?
So with simplybefound.com, we can register their business out on 500 plus networks. It all depends on what business they are, so what industry they're in, where they're located, and what areas they all serve. So if you're a restaurant, you're going to have specific networks that are for you for a restaurant. If you're a doctor's office, you have specific networks that are for you. So we say 500 up to 500 plus networks. I think we work right now with about 960 networks in total. But a lot of those get taken off depending on what industry you're inside of. So the main ones that are out there are going to be, your Apple Maps, your Siri, your Alexa, being able to get you registered on all of those types of networks. YP.com for the US, which is going to be Super Pages, Yellow Pages, and all of that stuff with MapQuest. The next thing is we built an entire social media app, so they can actually come in, manage all their social media from one spot, put all the information out by writing one piece. We brought AI inside of that to help them write social media. And then I developed the entire AI SEO pixel, which means you can take one set of code, put it on any website. Doesn't matter who built it, what it's built on. I had someone the other day that put it onto a front page website, and I was like, I say it works with any website. I'm not sure if that's going to work. I haven't seen front page in years, and it still worked for him. But it went through and it can change titles. It can change information on the website based on what the search console is saying. And that is an AI that's going to go through and handle all the SEO on your website. It's going to handle all of the schema. It's going to make everything super simple. It's going to make recommendations to you for what blogs you should be writing about. And it's going to stay on top of you for all of that information. But one key point of the AI SEO pixel is everything is approved by a human. So there's an entire SEO team that we have. And I'm one of the main guys that's inside of that piece. But we go through and we approve everything manually inside of there because we don't let the AI go rogue. I'm really truly against just letting it go out and make changes to your website without a human looking at it, because sometimes it wants to do things that just don't make sense. Wants to change call to actions and that type of thing. But that AI SEO pixel is going to do all of your alt tags. So you have the right SEO there, your internal linking, your page descriptions, make sure everything is unique. That's going to help your website rank. And what used to take, back in the SEO world, we used to say, it's going to take 6 to 8 months. It's a long-term play. I'm seeing people get results in the first 30, 45 days. They're ranking higher with their searches.
And as we're seeing here, this is going to be a very fast race with a lot of runners in it. So you've got to get in early. So I would recommend everyone checking out simplybefound.com to, take those first steps if this stuff is brand new to you. Robert, this is so useful. I just want to kind of ask you one further question because I'm really fascinated by this. In your experience and with everything that you've seen, I don't want to look, say, 10 years into the future because that's kind of making it up. But at the end of next year, what do you think this whole space is going to look like?
It's going to be a lot of automation. There's going to be the people that have any kind of knowledge on how things work is going to be the ones that succeed. We have a lot of different places that are going to happen over the next year, with especially in the United States, with Elon being part of Trump in a lot of different ways of not getting into the politic world. That's going to speed some of that AI stuff up, make things to where it's going to be more prominent inside of this. So you have to make sure that you're doing those right pieces to be able to make sure that you're being found. I predict that AI search is probably going to beat out Google. Google's going to have to figure out how to make money off of AI search and figure out how to put ad revenue in. If I was to guess, and I'm not a Google partner or anything like that. I used to be, but I refuse to be a partner inside of that because they require an ad spend budget. And I don't believe in doing ads, and it has its place, but for the most part, I think it's a waste as far as marketing budget goes. But it's one of those things to where they're going to have to figure out how to make money from AI. So you're going to see all of the big boys, your major players, trying to figure it out. OpenAI has already said that you're going to get more benefits if you are a member. So if you're paying for their program, than if you're using their free version. So they said they'll make enough money off of those paid subscriptions that they don't have to do ads. I'm kind of curious to see if they hold to that. I saw that article over the weekend, but it's one of those things to where people are going to have to figure out how to make money from it. And there's going to be a lot of scams. There's going to be a lot of pieces that are out there, and business owners need to be really super careful for what they do because it's going really super fast. Like I said at the beginning of this, it reminds me of being back, going from dial-up to cable modems, and everybody now having Wi-Fi. I remember when that didn't even exist. It's moving at that kind of speed. It's going to be just like social media, but it's going to be to a whole new realm. Back in 2008, marketers thought that social media was going to be a whole entire fad of itself. And it was. A lot of people made a lot of money off of social media. We connected in ways that we've never connected before. But this one is going to be how they're finding your business and how people are finding information and how they're looking for real information. Everybody now has an assistant, or some of them like to call it, I guess, what do they call it? Co-pilots inside of the system. But it's one of those things to where everybody has this in their pocket. Everybody has it on their counter. If you're not being found there, it's really going to leave your business behind. I think that answered your question. It was kind of a long-winded answer.
No, it was a brilliant answer. And I think, a lot of us will be thinking, I'm going to come back and have a listen to this again next year and see if it's true. And I'm not putting you on the spot, Robert, but it's just, so useful to kind of get this insight from somebody who's been so close to this for so long and obviously watched those, trends happening, but is now absolutely serving businesses in the way that, is going to future-proof many, many businesses going forward. So, Robert, thank you so much for your time today. And everybody, go to simplybefound.com.
Thank you, Neil. Have a great day.